This is an SM Media production. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Report, your exclusive Celtic SM Media podcast. I'm Scott McPike. It's always a pleasure to be your host, and it's been a few weeks since we've been on. There's been a lot happening in terms of the game. There's been a lot of things happening off the park as well that has kind of contributed to no pod, but we are back. We're going to try and be as consistent as possible from now up until the run-in. There's a lot to look into between now and the end of the season. And to join me in this week's episode, it's a pleasure to talk to. As always look forward to having him on the show. One of my favourite people to talk to about football. It's a pleasure to welcome back Stewart Ross.
Yep, thanks for having me back on, mate. I know, like you say, we've had a few. Last couple of weeks been trying, but yeah, I think we've picked a good time. Plenty to talk about.
Yes, I would say we have. I mean, obviously, I think certain points yesterday we were thinking this could have been a very different podcast. There was a lot of tops and turns. Probably one of the most entertaining games in a Scottish Cup I can remember in a long time. And I think it was only rivaled today with the Coventry Man United game. It really had everything in terms of looking at Celtic. We'll get into that later on, but you've got to give Aberdeen a lot of credit for the way they came out. Like they on it, like a lot of Aberdeen teams in the past have really kind of sunk when they've come up against kind of like Celtic teams in the past who've kind of responded well. When Celtic responded well from going down early, but Aberdeen were get back into it. There was 2 times where they take their chance and it goes all the way. And I think Aberdeen, I think Peter Lever in particular has got to take a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I think they've not watched Aberdeen kind of consistently, but anytime Celtic have played them this season, I think other than the game at Celtic Park, I think obviously up there, it was tight. Start of the season, drop points up there this year, and then the weekend, you're like, how have you finished in the bottom 6? Like you've got like proper good players. With Offski, as everyone will know about him, but I like the midfield as well in terms of Barron and Clarkson as well. They've got some proper good football players, and you just wonder why they are where they are. And yeah, it's one that yesterday like you say, looking at it from a neutral kind of or from an Aberdeen perspective to start, they made an absolute game of it. But I think Celtic have had a lot to do with that as well in terms of how we kind of managed or didn't manage key parts of that game.
I think the last time we were on was after Hearts, and I remember at the time thinking at that point, I'm sure it was Hearts we were last on, thinking this has been a big opportunity missed. Obviously, Rangers had lost on the Saturday. Celtic, I thought, just looked fairly bang average in that game, but there has been a resurgence over the past kind of 5 games. Just looking, I mean, they've scored more than 3 goals in all 5 games. There's been goals conceded in there as well. Obviously, a game at Ibrox that we can kind of look at as well. But the one thing that's caught my eye, Stuart, since that Hearts game is that there has been a level of stability brought back in. And I think a lot of that is down to the return of 2 players. I think we've got to look at Hatate and Carter Vickers. Their reintroductions have just brought that level of calmness and energy that team's been missing for a long time. And I don't think it's a coincidence that their introductions are to do with the upturn in form.
Yeah, totally. It's consistency in terms of, not having to chop and change to halves. Hatate's been missed in terms of, like you say, that energy and the ability to kind of pick teams apart with passing and that sort of stuff. That's been missing. It's a huge amount of kind of burden laid at O'Reilly's door in terms of that, and sort of coupled with issues on the wings, which again has been a bit better recently, but again yesterday that kind of showed through a wee bit again too. But yeah, I think having those guys back, the McGregor being injured hasn't probably helped. I think if he'd managed to keep McGregor fit throughout this whole period, they'd have a wee bit more stability in terms of that kind of yesterday. We managed okay without him, at Ibrox until he kind of come on, and you can argue whether he should have been on yesterday. That day, you could argue whether he probably was he fit enough to start yesterday. But yeah, I think that's been key. I think guys like Kuhn starting to kind of step up a wee bit. And yeah, just having more, it's given Rodgers more options in that middle of the park, and as well with having Hatate back and Bernardo contributing as well. Iwata has contributed too. So yeah, I think that's been Carter Vickers is probably the main one in terms of. I know yesterday was probably a bit different. Have his best game by a long shot, but I think having him in, having him properly up to speed, we're trying to bring him back early and he's breaking down again, stuff like that. So yeah, having him back has been key as well. And you just kind of yesterday obviously didn't, you just kind of hope that we've had all the blips this season and that this is it now to the end of the season, that you can keep everyone fit. And I think up until yesterday, which you can kind of almost put to one side, being a cup, I think performances have been probably the best they've been all season, probably this last month or two. So yeah, it's timed well. Hopefully we can just keep that going straight through the split as well.
I remember having a conversation with you, one of the early pods we did, and I'm sure it was a defeat. I can't remember if it was Kilmarnock or something. And I think we spoke about was Celtic's press at times was really off. I really thought Celtic's press, particularly against Rangers in the first half, I thought was exceptional. And I think it's coincidental as well that second half, similarly under Ange, Celtic's midfield would tire. We saw that yesterday as well, where you just saw McGregor and Hatate get a bit leggy. But there's no way or other way of looking at it. Is Celtic are capable of some frightening stuff in early stages. And I think looking at that first half against Rangers, that's probably the best Celtic have been all season. Is that unfair?
Yeah, no, that's probably about right. I think, and again, yesterday you maybe seen it as well. I think second half were quite good, but I don't think first half. I know Kyogo gets some presses the mistake for the first goal, for Kuhn's goal, but we Yang to Maeda's. I mean, obviously, everyone knows Maeda until the final bit, the actual final third, the final shot, final cross can be wildly inconsistent, but the what he gives you off the ball is massive. It's absolutely massive, and that was a big part of. Obviously, the first goal comes from that. A bit bizarre circumstances, but it comes from that. I think him, Kyogo, and Kuhn quite well balanced, but also all pretty good off the bank. Kuhn's not amazing off. I think he's not got the same kind of intensity as Maeda, obviously, but he's kind of more than willing. I think you've seen that with there's a game at Livingston, pinches the ball back. I think he can grow that with that as well. But I think that front three lends itself quite well if you've got O'Reilly in there as well, quite intelligent with how he presses the game. Yeah, I think, but like you say, that's a bit of a downgrade in terms of Yang or Palmer. Obviously, he's had to turn to Forrest yesterday as well. Maeda hopefully is not going to be a kind of like a miss that's going to cost in any kind of way over this next few weeks. But I think that left wing's a bit of a question mark, and there's probably another position that's potentially a question mark as well. But I think that's been something Rodgers has always been kind of keen to say in terms of that, especially that counter pressing, that winning it back quick and keeping the pressure on. I think he'd done that quite well in the second half yesterday when we kind of had the best kind of spell. But yeah, I think Maeda's a bit of a loss in that regard. But and whether he'll be back for the end of the season, it still seems to be kind of he's out for the rest of the season, but not 100%. If you could get him back for the cup final, it could be pretty big. But yeah, I think that's been another part that has been a bit better in recent weeks too.
Let's get into, obviously, yesterday we'll kind of do a bit of a deep dive on it. Obviously, cup semi-final against Aberdeen, Saturday lunchtime, very big occasion. I think obviously Aberdeen were. That's the only thing they really had to play for the moment. So I think we did expect Aberdeen would be really up for this, and to be fair to them, they were. The team lines, I looked at the team and thought, I'm not sure about this. Now, the reason was not McGregor. I thought McGregor would come back in just based on his experience in these types of games, and I know Rodgers kind of thrives on that and kind of that type of environment. Like Rodgers, I think that was his 10th straight one at Hampden or something. He's got a terrific record in those sort of games, so I understood why McGregor come back in. He played in the Brodsky against St Mirren. Now, I don't know what I really think Nawrocki is somebody who's been fairly not mistreated, but I think it's very difficult to assess how he's been as a signing because we haven't seen that much of him. And then he brings back Scales. Now I don't think Nawrocki deserved to be dropped, but I also don't think like Scales is deserved to come back in. If that means like, I was very surprised at that. That's it. The first was obviously another one later on that in the lineup we'll talk about, but I thought Scales coming back in, you can understand it to a degree, but I don't think Nawrocki put a foot wrong against St Mirren, so I just didn't agree with it, to be honest.
No, I think injuries with Nawrocki probably not helping him either. I think he's been in and out. You think the Rangers game at the New Year, he was kind of thrown in when Welsh got injured.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably not, like you said, just not gone as expected for him. I think there are probably a couple of issues with his game that Rodgers probably, I think aerially, I think he's probably not great, but I think I'd done a piece a wee while ago talking about, obviously it's a partner, like basically, centre halves, it's two players playing one position. So, if you've got the right mix, Carter Vickers can be the dominant one. Nawrocki, he's good with the ball. He's shown look a lot more comfortable than Scales has shown certainly recently, and stepping out. He's just not quite. There's clearly something that because what kind of sticks out with Nawrocki in terms of how you're talking about how he's kind of been managed is that even last week he gets taken off, whereas Scales comes back from an injury yesterday and plays the full game. So what's the kind of is it he's trusted or is it a fitness thing? It's kind of hard to tell. I think it's with 5 games left, 6 games with cup final. It's probably not the best time to be kind of chopping and changing that position, but you feel with Scales yesterday that it's getting to the point that really was a serious purple patch he's had at the start of the season. And fair play to him, he was good. There was nothing, but I think there was an acceptance even then that he's playing above himself, almost like we know what his kind of his level is. I think he's probably out of form even just now, you could say, but I think I know Rod probably likes that balance of the natural left footer on that side as well, but I think when you couple with Taylor's kind of, obviously a lot of teams kind of try to exploit that left-hand side, kind of dumping balls on top of Taylor and stuff. When you've got Scales next to him, who's, the kind of issues we're talking about, then that was obviously where Aberdeen got their joy yesterday. And it'll be interesting to see that. You presume, given what happened yesterday, that Scales, if he stays fit, will just play now till the end of the season alongside Carter Vickers. But it's definitely a position for Lagerbielke to come in and try to bomb him out, and it's unlikely he's going to have a future. What does Stephen Welsh do? He has to kind of make a decision for his career almost this summer. There's plenty of positions that need their priority, but that's probably not one you thought with the business that was done last summer that would be, but you just kind of question it. But I think from now to it probably is Scales, but it's not doesn't fill you with a whole load of confidence.
It was interesting you mentioned about Lagerbielke. I was doing a piece over the weekend on the new Aberdeen manager, Jimmy Fallon, and I was talking to an Elfsborg based journalist, and he'd said about Lagerbielke, and I'd said obviously that he's hardly featuring. Like they'd said about he got a win of the Champions League game, and I was said, but yeah, but it's just not worked out, and they're astonished. They're absolutely astonished. He's not. They thought he was going to go from Elfsborg on to the next level, and I think there is that in terms of Elfsborg to Celtic's a big jump, but I think also I think Rodgers has it in his head, and we'll obviously get into Yang in a second, but I think he's got it in his head that Scales is perfect. Scales is a perfect profile to partner with Carter Vickers in that type of game. Brings that left-sided balance. And maybe I don't think he looks at Miovski as that much of a physical threat, but I think for some reason he feels that Scales is more suited to that type. And I just don't get that. I don't get that from the point of view that Scales, you can see that he's dipped. And we've seen that in the past as well. Like, there's not many players who have that purple patch can go off form and find it again. It doesn't really happen. So I think it's one that, as you say, will need to be looked at and so on. But I think he will. I think he'll just go with Scales because I think he's comfortable with him. Like, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yang, on the other hand, Stewart. Again, I mean, I don't think he's obviously wants to be as poor as he is. Like, obviously, no player does, but you can see times that he's just the physical presence that you need to have for a Celtic win. I don't think it's a coincidence yesterday that a lot of Celtics playing the first half was going through the right hand side, and there was literally nothing going down the left. And something I want to touch on later about Johnson and Kuhn forming a really good kind of link up. Yang in particular, Taylor's a bag of nerves with him, and when you have a player like that who just isn't cutting it, it has an effect on the rest of the team. And I think Taylor, who is kind of under the microscope anyway, as you have obviously kind of covered well in the Celtic Way over the week, Yang's just not doing it. And there's probably a deep dive we could spend a full podcast on. What do you do with him? Like, because Forrest comes in for him and almost immediately just does more. Like, it's almost like straight away.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, because there's wingers are inconsistent, but that's probably taking it to a whole kind of different level. And Palmer's probably giving him a run for his money as well. I think there's a lot of just kind of general football and kind of intelligence that needs. Yesterday, not so much even on the ball, or it's kind of that out of possession, just kind of jumping into things. I don't know how many fouls he gave away, but just a bit kind of just really needs that refinement in his game, because there's good stuff there. He's good technical, dribbling, and he's shown he can with a final ball at times. But yeah, I think, and the thing was, he was probably in his kind of best run of form until kind of the red card at Hearts, and it just kind of seems to have. I think obviously Kuhn finding form on the right meant Maeda was a stick on the other side, and it's not really kind of his kind of form maybe down the pecking order again. Young player come from a league on the other side of the world. It's his first season. You can't probably played more football than he should have done. I think that's maybe the kind of the crux of it. But Maeda's injured. You've kind of got to have somebody on that left hand side who's going to step up. Nobody's going to give you what Maeda does off the ball, but you're hoping for that kind of just a bit of consistency. I just wonder how much Forrest could play this next. It's obviously a fitness thing, but if he's got, what did he come on 25, half an hour yesterday? Has he got an hour in him? Could you get? Because I don't think there's another Celtic winger that played that ball to Johnson down the line for the third. Just kind of with that weight of pass, just really probably. He's probably, and Rodgers has said that himself, but I think that probably more speaking to his other options than Forrest, but in terms of the best winger kind of line, or just brings that level of quality up. I think it's just going to, again, with the 5 league games, the cup final, it's just going to have to be, can you get enough across them? Who's going to, whether that is an hour of Forrest, half an hour of Palmer, whatever the kind of mix is, there's not one of those three going to be able to play all 5 games and give you kind of what you need. I don't think so. And again, it's going to be one for us because he's obviously Tillio's loaned, Palmer's and come kind of in and out. You don't see him displacing Maeda if he's fit there. You obviously want a bit more creativity. Maybe if you're having a second choice there, Palmer and Yang, have they shown it enough consistently? Palmer, probably, yeah. I don't know what that's probably another kind of area that would need to be thought about a bit more in terms of and development as well, because you've seen it with like kind of completely out of the picture just now as well. You're going to have to make a decision on whether you've seen enough from these guys and the kind of minutes they have been that you say, right, well, we give you a loan with a view to giving you a chance. Is that something that you do with Yang? I don't know, but I think I'd be surprised if he started at Dundee. I think you'd probably see Palmer get the nod there. Not that he was kind of typical of his kind of performances this season when he came on as well. But it's a tough one to. Those are the kind of positions, and obviously the issues that they're all on that left-hand side.
Yeah,
where you've got the issue on the left wing. We know Hatate's probably not, compared to if you had, say, Bernard on there out of possession, Hatate's not going to give you that. But you need him in there for the other stuff he can give you. Then you've got Scales, then you've got Taylor, and you just, by that point, you're like, you've got too many issues in one part of the park. And compared to, like you say, the right-hand side, which, like you say, Kuhn, Johnson forming a nice partnership. You've got O'Reilly kind of drifting over to that side. It's kind of traditionally it would always be the left for Celtic as well, but that's more the issue by a long way at this moment in time, anyway.
And we spoke a few weeks ago, obviously, about a goal after 21 seconds that had kind of changed the landscape of a game. It only takes, I think it's about 2 minutes, obviously, Miovski kind of, again, it's kind of difficult to really. Carter Vickers, you would say, is probably the kind of culprit, and I don't like blaming individual players for goals, but I do think he has obviously caught out. But you look at the second half, and there is just that kind of energy that drifts. But the one kind of good point in the game is obviously Kyogo, who presses the defender, wins the ball well, has the shot. It's a good save in all seriousness, but Kuhn's there, tucks it away, it's 1-1. Overall, the first half, it was kind of just, it wasn't a nothing first half, but there just wasn't a lot happening. But I wanted to kind of touch on Kyogo because we've had a lot of conversations over the past year about is he suited to this type of system, but you can tell at times in this sort of environment where not a lot's going on behind him. And I think Kyogo's been someone who has been really kind of brought to life a wee bit with the return of Hatate, but I thought yesterday he was starved of service. Like it just seemed that, and I know like you could tell Hatate was getting leggy, but I thought, I mean, he has to go and kind of create the only chance he has, which is obviously they've got the equaliser. It just was one of those days for Kyogo where he kind of was like, right, I need to do this myself because nothing's happening, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when Kuhn is trying, I thought Kuhn was very busy in the first half. He was trying to, obviously, had a kind of bit of a bad knot with the nose, but there was times where Kuhn was trying to get kind of break in, and Kyogo was kind of not really there. But I just thought it was kind of one of those difficult days for Kyogo where he was kind of starved a wee bit.
Yeah, again, I think some of the stuff we're talking about here in terms of the specific areas of pitch, I think are kind of consistent with what we've seen this season. And again, Kyogo probably not being as involved, not, put it kind of blunt, like Rodgers not getting the best out of him, or whatever way you want to put it, is indicative of this season as well. Obviously, a wee bit better the last few months. I think Johnson, particularly on that right hand side, getting further forward and getting more of those cutbacks that were kind of trademark under Ange. The kind of things that he thrives on a wee bit more has probably helped. But yeah, I think just it was a 45 minutes that we've seen a lot of this season. Just kind of it's always been a kind of fits and starts or whatever. It's never been probably never had a full 90-minute performance, not even in the league this season. Even last week at St Mirren, it was a good result in the end. More than comfortable in the end, but the first half's a non-event. And yeah, it just felt yesterday, I think, especially like you say, the early goal probably just spooked them. I didn't feel any kind of panic when that happened. You're struggling to see just because of that whole kind of lack of kind of rhythm or control or whatever, however you want to call it. I think that probably didn't help, Kyogo. I think looking at the kind of chances and stuff, there wasn't, I think actually Aberdeen kind of had a higher XG. I hadn't looked until tonight, because usually cup games only on kind of certain data providers and stuff. So yeah, Yang's was a good chance to header. You had the Kuhn chance. Other than that, the first half, yeah, Kyogo had wee kind of bits here and there, but yeah. And I think, in fact, over the match, like I say, Aberdeen actually had the more clear-cut chances, and that's again just kind of indicative of the season. But I think, obviously, and you've had Ida coming in and contributing as well, but I didn't think he had the best kind of however long he was on performance yesterday either. So yeah, that's not probably an area I'm as worried about as some of the other areas.
Do you ask a question about Ida though, but in terms of what he's potentially going to cost, because it has been one of those kind of accidental loans that's almost immediately you can see it's paid off. Like you can see he's better than what, like he's more of the finished article than what O is.
Yeah.
Do you ask that question, or do you try and get a cheaper version of that?
It just comes down to cost. If you're saying 2-3 million, I think some of the fee, I think the number kicking about 6, I wouldn't be keen to be paying that, because if you pay that, you're potentially going to pay 5-6 for Bernardo. You need to go and sign a keeper, left back, regardless of whether it's an upgrade for Taylor or just you need depth there, because Bernabei's wasn't even trusted as a backup and being loaned out. So at that point, you're like, well, look, this is 4 or 5 key positions that you've spent, that you potentially be spending upwards of, you've been to 15 million plus. Not going to spend 20 million Celtic. So I think you need to be a bit clever about that. But yeah, and like I say, I think if at the lower, but then it's what the kind of ambition is. Would you be happy with him starting the first Champions League or Europa League or whatever it's going to be next season? Is he going to, raise the bar? Probably not. And I think yesterday was probably you could see what he brings in terms of gives you that focal point. He's got a bit of pace as well, but just the kind of like final, the chance that he kind of wiped out, but won the ball, but just needed to get the touch and hit the one that's kind of behind him, even the offside one. Probably need to be as far offside as he was. Yeah, I think that's one that you need to wait to the end of the season, I think, to give him the full kind of. I think he's had games where you think, well, yeah, absolutely, you would do a deal, and absolutely no question he's contributing. If Celtic do go on to win the league, he'll have played a huge part in this second part of the season. But I think you need to have the whole kind of, you get to the end of the season, and by that point you can look back at the whole kind of his whole kind of contribution and make a decision then. But I think, unless he scores in every single game between now and the end of the season and becomes a hero that kind of way, I think everyone would be kind of consistent with saying we'll wait to the end of the season and we can make a decision, but probably not just quite seen enough that is said he's going to be an upgrade. But like you say, in terms of what was needed there, Rodgers didn't feel Woe was going to provide a kind of enough quality as that kind of second striker, rotation striker for Kyogo. Then he's absolutely done that job.
What do you think of the Giakoumakis comparison? Because there are things you can see where you think that there's similarities, but the one thing I would say about Ida that he's better at than Giakoumakis is he's a better footballer than Giakoumakis. And that to me could be the swing. Like he's not afraid to go and do the dirty work. There was times yesterday, obviously Aberdeen played a kind of solid 3 at times, and he was having to do a lot of dirty work in extra time, and he was able to do it. And you didn't see that from Giakoumakis. So you can understand that comparison, but I think there's more of a footballing brain in there than there was in Giakoumakis. Giakoumakis is a better finisher. But for what Rodgers wants in a striker, I think Ida's probably up there. But I think he fits that bill.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I brought him in, when people probably looked at him and thought, well, why are we loaning a third choice striker at Norwich? But when you actually look at how Rodgers probably, and like I say, that's part of why Kyogo probably, does he fit what Rodgers wants or not? You can look at Ida and say that's kind of archetypal, or the kind of forward that, more a bigger athletic can do, like I say, dirty work, can do different bits and pieces, run the channel, holding it up, bringing others into play, all that kind of stuff. Not to say that Kyogo can't do some of that bits and pieces, but that's exactly what he's kind of looking for.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's just, is it that quality? Is there, like you say, is there maybe another kind of version of him out there that has got a bit more quality, that can do a lot of these same things, but does have a wee bit more? And in terms of his finishing as well, like you said, Giakoumakis was probably more, in terms of a penalty box finisher, then Giakoumakis. But not to say that he does, some of his finishes have been fantastic. The ones at Motherwell stick out, and obviously Ibrox was pretty good as well in terms of he takes that and finishes it as well. So and again, you can talk yourself either way with him, I think. So definitely an end of the season, wait and see how things pan out, and you can kind of make a call on him there. But again, like I said, in terms of what I think people's expectations, I think he's far exceeded that.
Let me throw a question at you, right? Let's just play a hypothetical, like, what if, right? Say there's £5 million earmarked, and you can get Bojan Milovski for £5 million or Adam Ida. Where do you go? What fits better? Who's going to be a better contributor? Who, as you say, is going to be he can go to the next level? He can be a deputy to Kyogo, because Kyogo's still going to play. Let's be honest, Kyogo's the number one. Milovski or Ida, who's the better fit? Like, who would be if you had £5 million, who would you go and get?
I think Aberdeen probably look for more than £5 million, won't they? I think
in this world, only £5 million. In this world, you can get for £5 million.
In this world, And I think he's probably got more options than Ida. I think there'll be other clubs around Europe looking at him and thinking, I think with Ida, he probably have options, and obviously having played in the Championship, and maybe people going, he's an international striker as well. I think Milovski's been great, and I would again just maybe think, what else is out there for £5 million? Then I would give you an answer. But if it was down to the two, I would probably go Milovski, just with, they do have all kind of similar traits. They can do kind of similar things, and Milovski's proven goal scorer in the league and contributing in Europe too. I essentially don't think there's a massive amount between them, but probably just Milovski. But like I say, I think he's probably going to have more options, and I think probably he'll maybe feel a move within Scotland's probably not the step he's looking to take. He'd maybe be looking for another, whether that's, I think there's links to teams and Serie A and stuff like that. That might be more his kind of. But yeah, I would if it was just that your hypothetical world and just the 5 million, they're both the same. I probably would tick the Miovski box.
Into the second half, obviously, Celtic do really well. James Forrest comes in and it's a brilliant goal, to be fair. And you're thinking 2-1, it's not been magnificent, but it's up the road, get into a final, waiting who's going to come up in the Sunday. But a weird goal to concede. I don't know where you start with this. The second one's worse than from a Celtic perspective. It's a bad goal to concede because you should be home and hosed at that point, and it just doesn't work out that way. And it's hard to put your finger on what goes wrong, but those are the sort of goals that shouldn't be. The one thing I kind of thought is, should Hart be off his line? To see it happen again half an hour later, how he's able to peel that quick, it's just bizarre. Like, it's just, again, there's times you think of this defence is like any cross balls and they're nowhere, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, the second one's worse because you've already conceded the same goal, so do it twice. Do you know what I mean? The second one's definitely worse. And there's obviously the context there that Rodgers takes off Forrest, chucks on Nawrocki. You've got 3 centre-halves across the back. Scales is just, whether that's if somebody gets their head on that and Celtic pump it up the park and keep it in the corner, you go, that was a great decision. Whereas it worked out probably completely opposite. Whereas the ball comes down that right hand side, you've not got a winger on that side. Johnson's 2v1, can't stop the ball into the box. Hart, yeah, I think for that, maybe not the first time, but that second, you're just wanting at that point in the game, with everything that's going on, your keeper just to come out, even if it's just a punch, whatever, just get some on that or get a fouled or whatever. To just, we've seen this a lot for Hart. We know what he's probably done better than I kind of thought he would maybe do, to be honest, in his last season, given the kind of obviously decline that he's still managed to keep a kind of base fine. Happy enough, he's the best keeper at the club, no doubt, but just the ball drops in the 60, gets harm on it. But again, you can say, well, Scales caught under it, should be dealing with that. But yeah, it just kind of was unfitting with the whole kind of afternoon, that you just never felt comfortable. You never felt comfortable with those balls coming into the box. And with Carter Vickers having a shaky afternoon, that just kind of permeates across. And yeah, I just had that kind of, even when O'Reilly scores, and I mean, again, you look at that Sockler, another chance. Hoylett had that chance as well. Gave up some seriously big chances out with the ones that did concede. So yeah, like I say, I think it was a lot hard, making hard work out was probably an understatement. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're just happy to get through. And like I said, kind of towards the start, you could probably, hopefully, be able to just part this one. This was a cup. This was, a kind of bit of a mad day. We just forget about this, and we just kind of constantly now got those 5 games just to really focus in now, and hopefully got some silliness or whatever you want to call it, the system. Because yeah, I don't know how we can go through 5 league games like that between now and then season. Because again, it's going to be tense. There's going to be moments like, to defend a slender lead, and that's probably what does start worrying some people, that some of this stuff's creeping back in again. If we don't take the chances at the other end, are we going to, we've not got a goalkeeper who's going to come off the line and take pressure off at a key time. We're relying on somebody getting ahead on it, somebody taking responsibility. Then yeah, you can kind of see the worry. But like I say, I'm really hoping to be able to just kind of part this one, and it's a kind of outlier in terms of, because like we've kind of said, performances probably been pretty as good consistently over the last wee while as they have been all season. So
You mentioned the word silliness, and I think it's quite apt for the penalty shootout, because there was a couple of things. Obviously, like I think Hart obviously had it in his head, and fair enough to him. I want my last game to be a cup final. I wanted to be here. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I understood what he was doing. I think Aberdeen were actually beat with their goalkeeper. Like, I think that kind of killed Aberdeen's momentum in the penalty shootout, like, to a degree, because I don't think that helped them. Hart was just wanting to be the hero, and fair enough to him, it works out. But was there a concern with it? Because Celtic's record with penalties this season has been fairly poor. Like, you know what I mean? Palmer's missed a few. I think Tati's missed one as well. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not been great, but I think one thing that jumped out, like, looking at Awata's penalty more than anything, Celtic's penalties mostly were pretty good. Like, you know what I mean? They were just all of them that went in they were tucked away so calmly. Like, O'Reilly's I thought was very good as well. The only dodgy one is Hart's. Like, it's quite apt, isn't it? Like, he obviously had it in his head that he wants to be the hero. He wants to this was his last dance. I mean, it could have went the other way, but it worked out pretty well for him, didn't it?
Yeah, just as well, I think. Yeah, it's just not as much as I think everyone's seen the clip of him hitting the penalty in the friendly for Man City. And he said that after the game, he's like, well, I'm mad about penalties. I love penalties or whatever he said. I like, that's all great, but you're still a goalkeeper. There's still the rest of the team standing. There's only 4 taking. The rest of the team standing there, and you're letting the goalie go up and take one.
Do you think it was more that Hart? Do you think it was more Hart wanted to take it, or the other players didn't want to? But
he says, I put my hand up. Fair enough, but I don't know. I didn't. It's not what you expect to see. Probably not what you really wanted to see, because you just. But yeah, you get away with it. So I would be surprised if it went to penalties in the final that he would be taking one. I wouldn't think. Anyway, but yeah, just again, like I said, silliness. Probably not him cutting edge analysis, but that's just how it felt yesterday. There was just something in the air about that game, and it's probably an apt finish. Like, keeper steps up to try and be the hero, misses it, but then goes on and saves to win. So fair play to him. And I don't, I've written about Hart and being potentially an issue this season, should have been replaced last season and stuff like that. But he's been a great kind of. He's contributed in these 3 seasons. He's made a difference. Especially when you think back to the time we've come in, he needed characters, and he's certainly never lost that part of his game. He's got that mentality, and listen, you might need that. You need maybe not stepping up to take penalties, but you know what I mean. That I know he's not. Talking about just the goals there, he's not going to be able to. Do certain things that you'd hope for your goalkeeper to do, but if he's got that motivation, this is his last season, these are his last games of professional football in his career, then hopefully he can, make a difference, but not taking penalties, please.
This kind of thing I want to touch on with you is obviously that, I mean, it works out well in the end, and we've got a really exciting final to look forward to at the end of May, and it could be this kind of perfect 6 games for. I mean, it is going to be really exciting. Look from taking a step back and looking at it from a kind of different perspective. It's got the makings of a real thrill into the season. But you wrote a couple of days ago that was like really identifying upgrading Greg Taylor, and I wanted to kind of look at something that you kind of highlighted in the piece, which is terrific, by the way, and I'll urge anyone to go and check it out. You'd mentioned, obviously, Rodgers has been very vocal about adding pace and power to the squad. When you were kind of looking at these 3 left backs, and obviously I think all 3 of them you'll know far better than me. I've seen wee glimpses of all 3. Like, what is it about that left back position? Because Johnson's really hit a real vein of form at the moment as well. What is it about that position that you think is so important in upgrading Taylor? Because it's a position that you've said there's no depth. There's literally, Greg Taylor gets injured, Celtic don't have anything.
Mm.
What is it about that position you think is pivotal in summer?
Yeah, like Taylor's, you can't knock Greg Taylor for what he's done. Kind of. I think he's got parts of his game in it that were so perfect for what Ange wanted to do in terms of inverting, coming in field. He's short, medium passing. Because I think he was a midfielder when he, kind of was coming through and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we know what he can do well. We know what he can't do well. We more than know that by this point. And I think the things that he can't do well, we can get away with to an extent in Scotland. Like, we're going to get the ball dropped on his head quite often. I know kind of talked a lot about tonight how that's an issue compounded by scales issues at the moment. But particularly in Europe, you're going to need somebody probably closer to the kind of profile of Johnson that can physically kind of stand up to some of, ultimately some of the best players in Europe, but not just technical ability, that athleticism, physicality, all that sort of stuff. And you could kind of see with done the piece on Thiago Arojo, the Portuguese left back that linked to in January. He was a bit closer to that kind of Johnson profile. Maybe other wee bits and pieces of his game that kind of weren't standing out as much as you would hope. But yeah, with those three guys, you were kind of looking for that that kind of bit taller, bit more kind of physical, bit more, like I say, looking at kind of aerial duels, particularly because that has been an issue. But still having to tick a lot of these other boxes, going to be involved and build up a lot of the stuff that Taylor's really good at. Need to be able to do that. But those were the kind of main things I was looking at, because, and I think that's probably, it was quite interesting the bit with the kind of those quotes from Lee Conger and kicking about the other day.
Yeah.
And it was interestingly pace and power that Celtic were interested in 7 years ago. So, yeah, I think that's the route they're going to go down, especially that, we could probably talk for another hour about the recruitment side of things and how that's going to pan out with Mark Law leaving. Doesn't seem to be anyone coming in just yet. We're just comfortable with Rodgers kind of takes the kind of reins with that and the pros and cons of that. Like I say, I think it's probably pros and cons. I think pros probably gets the exact kind of players that he wants, but I think, like I say, this would be a whole kind of other discussion in terms of how that is the best kind of structure across the board.
Yeah.
Just for example, if a Premier League club were to come in for Rodgers at any point, and you know what I mean, that kind of. Well, I think Celtic kind of we'll go kind of halfway with this stuff that we had Lawler, we had Clear. You could clearly see we kind of don't spend any more than this on fees. We don't any older than, I think I had 23 for that, because I seemed to be 23, 24. Whereas I think Rodgers would probably want a wee bit, and there's a case to be made that maybe a bit more experience, but more older player that is just ready to come in. Maybe I think there's absolutely a case to be too many kind of these project, which is a word that's kind of been overused probably, but I think yeah, interesting to see how it plays out. I would prefer that you had that structure and you had somebody that is looking at the longer term. He says he wants to do that, but I think you would rather have somebody permanent in the club doing that. But like I say, the pros is that he kind of gets more the player he's looking, because clearly what was brought in last summer was not exactly what he was looking for. That's quite clear in terms of who's been used, and two of them out on loan by January, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think some of the other links have been interesting in terms of, probably not going to get the O'Hare, the Coventry City guy now given today, but potentially before. But him and Smodix as well at Blackburn Rovers, proper number 10s, proper kind of Tom Rogic, that more that I think obviously you got to think O'Reilly is going to get that move, so it's going to be a kind of almost a replacement for him. But O'Reilly can do a lot more in terms of he filled in deeper and he gives you a lot off the ball. But that would be a kind of profile I would expect him to be wanting in, as well as that whether it's them to play alongside Hatate and those kind of number 8s as a proper play in that kind of position, but be a number 10 in terms of a proper creator. Because we're going to come up against deep defences all season and all that sort of stuff, and maybe that's been an issue as well. But I think when you could see that, and maybe even some of the goalkeeping links as well seem a bit. I think again I'd done the Turkish goalkeeper scout report for Celtic Way, the Chakia was linked with Leicester. There was quotes at the time when he was linked with Liverpool as well, but quotes from Congerton about him too. So you can kind of see it seems to be going that way. Like I say, what pros and cons of that is probably a whole kind of discussion within itself.
Right, there's 5 games left of the season. Obviously, Dundee and Sunday. In terms of kind of lineup, you mentioned Jank Forrest comes in. Jank goes with Palma. Does he bring back Nawrocki? There's changes because I don't think he'll change much else. I think he's fairly comfortable with there. Awata probably comes in just to give McGregor a bit more time, and probably that pitch at Dundee's probably more dangerous than Livy at the moment, isn't it? It's in terms of injuries, but he obviously Celtic are in the driving seat to see this out. They've done it so often in the past. Final 5 games, Stuart, starting with Dundee. What sees this out? What is the way to do it? Do you rotate rotate at certain points, or do you just go with the players? Set a team in mind. Don't change from it unless there's injuries. How do you want the 5 games to go?
You probably don't want to. I presume that getting McGregor in yesterday from the start, even though he probably wasn't fit to start, was with the view to get another week's training now. He's had game time the last couple of weeks. I think Rogers was again saying about they'd had good news about it being a scan or something again. Yeah. So I think the kind of thought process there would be that he would come in. Like you say, wouldn't have an issue with it being Awata. Probably would have preferred, given how McGregor performed yesterday. But again, that is because of the injury. But and I thought Awata done well when he come on too. And he can probably feel a wee bit hard done by not to have started the game. And left hand side, like I said before, could you get an hour out of Forrest? Again, and as well, he's probably more suited, prefers the right as well. And he comes on at left, and he's been used on the left before, and that's his kind of, he can come in off the right, but he has always been that kind of on the outside of the right. I think he probably, like I said, I'd imagine Palma would probably get, given how Young played. Wouldn't see a lot of changes again, like we've talked about. Imagine Scales would stay in the team. I think, like I say, there's case to be bringing in Nawrocki based on what we've seen of both of them over the last couple of weeks, but just given the time of the season and what's at stake, like you say, don't want to be making too many changes and picking up any other injuries. Hopefully that's it's only a few games, so you hope we're not going to pick up anything that's going to keep anyone out for the rest of the games. I'd be looking at kind of splitting it up into, if you get through Dundee next week, you've then got those kind of 2 home games. And I think at home, you kind of, even though had plenty of issues with Hearts this season, and obviously Rangers will need to, you presume, all the 2 games before that, stuff could change again, but you presume they've got to come to Celtic Park and go out to win the game. Does that suit them? Potentially not. But I'd be kind of chunking it up like that. If you can get it through next Sunday, and then look at those 2 home games and think, basically, if you win those 2 home games, you're pretty much there, regardless of what Rangers do. If not, you've got kind of you would really be not totally wrapping it up, in an ideal world, yes, but that might not be the case. But obviously, you've then got a nervy kind of midweek trip to Rugby Park if you ideally don't want to be going there having to win the game. You know, if we've not put ourselves in a position of the results elsewhere, have kind of swung it back. But like I say, kind of before, you're just hoping now that there's no more kind of swings. This was the last kind of swing, hopefully. But I still, you know, I think from Rangers' perspective, there seemed to be a huge amount of kind of doom and gloom. Even after the Dundee game, it's only 3 points. It's one. I suppose you've got the goal difference, but it can still swing. You know, I could take drop points in that first couple of games to nerves would kick in again. So yeah, I think obviously got a bit of a advantage now, a wee bit of kind of leeway that, you know, if anything does go wrong in those first couple of games, you know, you've still got Celtic, you've got them at Celtic Park to kind of to push home that advantage, and you then got a couple of games then to see it out. But yeah, I think it's going to be hopefully no twists and turns, but you'd still be comfortable putting aside yesterday. Everything up till then in the league has been pretty consistent. That they've got enough to see it over the line. But yeah, I think next Sunday's probably the key, because Dundee have been good. They've been really good this season. Like I say, they've got issues with the pitch up there. I think that could be a tricky one for the first one. So I think if you can get that one next week, you can kind of start plotting the path from there. And obviously Rangers, I think, play first that day. Is that right?
Yeah, Rangers are on first against St Mirren.
So as much as they've, you know, kind of had, you know, that, you know, dropping the points and kind of people saying they've thrown it away, they're still in a position. Obviously, they go through today. That kind of hopefully gives them, from their perspective, that's a wee bit of a boost, hopefully, and a bit of a, you know, line in the sand of what's going on with them the last couple of weeks, that they can still see, you know, you go level on points before Celtic play at Dundee, put a wee bit of pressure on. So, yeah, I think next week's massive. They're all going to be massive, but I think if you can get over the line next week, you can start to kind of see a path to it. And yeah, it's probably still going to be a few tense moments, but hopefully not too many swings.
And that will do us for this week's episode of the Celtic Report. I want to thank Stuart for coming on, mate. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me back on.
Thank you very much, mate. And thank you very much, everyone who's tuned in. Follow the Celtic Report on social media for full analysis. We'll have the player ratings out. We'll be doing a few bits of kind of deep dives over the kind of next few days of what's going on. And obviously, we'll be back next week with a new episode. Thank you very much, folks. We'll see you soon.